1941, we got the Geological Society of America meets up, and they come up with a new theory called the modern synthetic evolution theory. And what they're saying is that there's advantageous mutations. So why can't we explain this long gradation? Where are the transitional forms? What do we do about the genetics of it and all that? They say we're going to change the theory and we're going to talk about mutations that took place. And later on, this theory was more developed in 1972 by two scientists in a paper that they published, and they call it punctuated equilibrium. Now, there's a little bit difference between the synthetic theory and punctuated equilibrium, but basically what punctuated equilibrium is saying is talking about rapid bursts. They're talking about basically that, you can't explain that the fish turned into the reptile because you're missing the missing links, what's called the missing link, the transitional forms. You can't explain that the reptile, turned into the bird. So what happened is basically it's like Transformers. You just understand it properly. It's like basically the thing transformed. How? Through mutations. So it just transforms immediately. Like Transformers, they don't take like 20 years to transform, all right? Otherwise they wouldn't be Transformers. That would be stupid, right? So what they do, they transform immediately, and they got that cool sound effect. I wish I had that here. But they transform. So that's basically what they're saying is that you can't explain this. So we're gonna bring this new theory comes along, which they call neo-Darwinism, this is part of it. That they come up with punctuated equilibrium in the modern synthetic evolution theory. So we don't need all the transitional forms anymore, even though they're still looking for them. All right, what else is needed? Reasonability of chance formations. Now, what's reasonability? Science is based upon human reason. Okay, it's a very important thing to understand. There's people who say science, 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 and you don't even know what they're talking about. Okay, it's very important that we understand that science is based upon rationality, it's based on reason, it's based upon things that make sense. The scientific method is a very good measure or a very good scale of determining things that are going to make sense and things that are not going to make sense, or things that will repeat or will not repeat the results. So what you need to do is you need to explain one major thing, is that the reasonability of chance formations. How reasonable is it to believe in chance formations? So if you just take one example, as the probability of the random formation of an average protein molecule made up of 500 amino acids. What's the probability? Given the three conditions. Condition number 1, all the amino acids are of the right type and in the right sequence. Condition 2, all amino acids in the chain are left-handed. Condition 3, all amino acids united by forming a peptide bond. And this is necessary for this. The probability chance is 1 chance in 10 to the 950th power. Now what is 10 to the 950th power? In case you're really weak in math for some reason, and not necessarily everyone studying math, but anyways, it's a 1 in 1 with 950 zeros across the screen. And I really did not want to type that out, because I don't have time for that. But basically the probability is extremely, extremely low. Okay, beyond low. Basically what scientists say, if anything is the probability of 1 in 10 to the 50th or less than that, is considered impossible. We don't even take into consideration. That's considered impossibility. So we're talking 10 to the 950th power. Now that's not even enough. That's just one example. And beyond that, we have to explain enzyme formation is only one step necessary for life. And it says nothing of the more complex processes like the formation of DNA, transcription of DNA to RNA, or mitosis and meiosis. Now, we go on to the reasons why it is accepted or why it's rejected. Okay? Just to speak of 3 reasons. 1 is anti-religion sentiment, past and present. Because this theory, you can say, quite openly, is anti-religious. Whether that's a good thing or whether it's a bad thing, irregardless, it's considered anti-religious in the way that we understand religion. The second thing is classroom conditioning. Because generally, in almost every single classroom, especially in the United States, most parts of Europe, the theory of evolution is taught. It's taught and is generally taught as a fact. And the third is propaganda. Okay, so we need to look at these 3 things in detail. Reasons: anti-revolution sentiment, past and present. If we look at the past, okay, now before, just don't start reading yet. Okay, before, we need to understand one very important thing, because like I said before, people don't have a full understanding of history. People really can't put history necessarily into perspective. They can't necessarily understand their own environment, they can't understand their own world. Most people probably have never even traveled very much outside of America or anything. So it's very important that we put things into context. First of all, okay, if we look at America, we look at our own country that most of us, I'd say, are at least brought up in, okay, or born and brought up in, that it's severely influenced by Europe. Okay, we have to understand that we can't go through an entire history lesson, but just keep in mind that basically the European paradigm is very similar to the American paradigm, at least historically. So the influence is there. So the relation between Europe and America is not going to be like the relation between America and China, for example, or America and Nigeria, for example. So just keep that fact in mind. So what's going on, we have to understand what is happening in the past in a European context. So it's very important to understand that. So we get this term, science versus religion, took place in Europe. This battle between science and religion. Basically what's happening is that you could say that the scientists were battling not necessarily religion, but the religion that they knew, which is Christianity. So that needs to be at least put into context. Is that not necessarily, we don't need to generalize these terms and say, religion and science are incompatible. Yeah, if you're using the same thing. You're actually saying that science or the scientific method and what we've discovered and Christianity are incompatible. I'm not making a claim whether it is or not, but that's what we need to understand when somebody makes that claim. And they say reason versus religion. So there's all these theses and all these articles coming out. Say religion doesn't make sense. You just have to have faith. You just have to, have to have blind faith. Do we just have to have faith? Do you have to take a leap of faith? Nothing makes sense. All these things. This is within a European context and is being directly applied to Christianity. So we should not use analogy and necessarily apply it to all other religions off the bat without understanding what those other religions have to say on the subject. Now if we look at the present context, okay, what is the anti-religion sentiment and why is the theory, reasons why it's not going to be accepted? One of the things is young earth creationism. It's a movement, basically what it's saying is using the genealogies in the book of Genesis and the later parts of the Bible, both the Jews and the Christians work independently. Okay, they figure this out independently. They work backward to estimate the time of the creation of the world. Results vary from about 5500 BCE to 3700 BCE. So the belief that the earth is young, on the order of about 6,000 to 10,000 years old, rather than the age of 4.5 billion years calculated by modern geology using scientific methods, including radiometric dating. So when we're talking about young earth creationism, for example, we need to understand when we say, science versus religion or science versus this, we need to put things into context. So if somebody comes along and says, I'm a creationist, or I believe in the concept of creation, I don't believe in evolution, that doesn't mean that they're necessarily belonging to this category and that they're saying, yes, the earth is 10,000 years old. Not all Christians believe this, not all Jews believe this, although there is a significant group of people who still do believe this, and they promote their theories. So the thing is, if you're going to do that, then you have to go and remodel the entire system. So if you're going to fight for it in high school and you say, we want to teach creationism, and if you want to teach this specific version of creationism, then you're going to have to make more adjustments than just discarding Darwin's theory. You have to, talk about why you're not going to trust the radiometric dating methods. You're going to have to understand, well, how do we readjust the periodic table of elements because of the radioactive elements that we're using in these tests. So that's something that needs to be put into context. Then Noah's flood being worldwide. So I'd say not necessarily all, I don't know if it's all or not, but many Christians, for example, I'm not sure about the Jews, maybe the Jews as well, they would know better, that they believe that Noah's flood was worldwide. So this, scientists have a major problem with this. Findings seem to have a problem with this, although there's a debate going on.